One
Here we
sound
go.
check. One,
One, two, three. Can you hear me okay?
we hear you. Do you
Yeah,
hear
good. Okay.
us?
So when we talked about the session, and this is quite a long session because first I'm really thankful for those that are staying up. Alexander, Artie, Kim, and others, because I know you've been on here for a long time, and it's quite a feat. And so we've got a 3 hour period basically, so we can really dig into it. I'm really pleased that for this period we have Gordon, who I met on World Futures Day, which World Futures Day was another 24-hour event, Zoom event like this. I host the first hour, and Gordon appeared in the 23rd hour to from Hawaii, and he just really blew me away because of his insight and knowledge and how much synchronicity. So we've had a number of conversations. When we first started looking at this hour, we we were talking in terms of calendars and time, and so it was a question of time that I thought would be the framing of this. And I particularly wanted to bring a Polynesian, Melanesian perspective to this, being here in the South Pacific and representing or trying to represent something of the Polynesian voice and perspective of the world, the Te Ao Māori view of the world, because we all have different ways of framing things. So the way of framing time and calendars become part of a conversation that Marina and I think probably Kim and Alexandria and I had at one stage. We thought it would make an interesting topic. Now, when I met Gordon, this topic came up again, but it flowed into wayfinding, into not only how we see ourselves in time and place and our relationships, but how we tune into our environment to find our way through the environment and that connection, that deep connection. And it was something that Gordon said before about 65% of the population is disconnected from the natural world. And so I think for this for this period of time, I just want to set some sort of ground, some sort of a platform, and let the conversation flow because I know Gordon probably could talk for 3 hours and it would be completely interesting. So, and also Kialana, who Kialoha, sorry, who is Gordon's partner, who is also an immensely talented and deep thinking person as well. So it's been a real joy, and that joy gives me some confidence in that in our ability to move into a brighter future. Because it can get us down, and most people I talk to don't see much of a future for us. They've kind of given up. So time, a question of time. Time. Let's go back. I'll jump back 5,000 years to understand the migration of Polynesian people and Melanesian people, and the cultures in Melanesia, through the Philippines into Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, go back tens of thousands of years. That establishment. So they travelled across quite wide waters a very long time ago, and it's not really acknowledged all that well. And then over the last few decades, there's been a lot of discussion about the voyaging of the Polynesians and the migration from what we know is now Taiwan, through to Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, up to Hawaii, down to Aotearoa, New Zealand, and over to Rapa Nui, Easter Island. And That was in the last sort of 1200 years period. And there was a lot of speculation that the discovery or the migration of those places was random and ad hoc and per chance rather than planned and thought ahead. So I just wanted to go into that because the Polynesian people were really the most amazing navigators in human history. The Pacific Ocean occupies a vast area, vast proportion of this planet. And they didn't just move from island to island to island, they moved into the unknown. They moved there knowing that there was something there, and they knew there was something there because they were so tuned into the environment that they were able to read the wind on the sails. They were able to hear the sound of the waves hitting the side of the waka and what that meant as far as going into different currents. They were able to look at distant clouds and know that they were over islands because of the cloud formations. And at night, and this is where time comes in, they were able to navigate because they understood the rotation of the planet and the movement of the stars. And they had quite a complex way of doing that at night time. So time was really relational. It was about the place that you were in, the place that you occupied, and the people that were around you framed time. And so thinking about time in a Polynesian way, you think about your genealogy and your ancestry and who was where, when. This was a time of great uncle Wiremu or such and such. So time only was present when there were people there, when we were present, which is kind of a quantum way of seeing the world, I think, when I sort of think about it. Nothing is there until you're there to observe it, being there. In some of the conversations, and my throat's a bit croaky, so I apologize for that. Some of the qualifications, conversations, and conversations that I've had with Alexandra, my friend in Australia, whose name's just gone right out of my head, who did her thesis on
Shay
children.
Brown. Shay.
Yeah, yeah, Shay Brown. The sense that when she was looking at children and education, children fell behind when they felt they had run out of time. They couldn't catch up. This whole framing of time and having to do things has become onerous on us. Before we talked about relaxing into things and breathing. Before we started, I was up last night thinking, oh, I hope Gordon's going to make it because I don't want to be sitting here talking by myself. And what am I going to talk about? And am I going to make any sense?
You
And,
you could do it.
and yeah, no, yeah, I think I probably could, but I just sound like an idiot too. But yeah, I think the point was that we carry so much anxiety that's been brought upon us by our way of seeing time and believing that we're running out of time, and then not occupying the time that we're in now, and relaxing into it and letting it unfold in front of us. So anyway, that's enough sort of ranting from me. I could, I guess, could explain things from a Māori point of view as far as time and food, if you're interested, because you know with that migration across the Pacific, there was that connection to from Rapa Nui, Easter Island to South America, and the collection of the sweet potato or the kumara that came back from South America through, and with that voyaging. was the sharing of stories because the planting of the kumara was in alignment with the middle of winter, and it was the alignment of the rising of Pleiades over the horizon, which which showed that it was at that time between May and June that was the best time to plant. And so different Māori iwi, which is the tribal groups, would watch the new year would start at the rising of Pleiades. And Pleiades, they understood was the mother planet. And this is related to being indigenous to place and observing that deep observation. So that they knew that there was a collection of stars that would come up at that point, but not always precisely on the same day, because the same day is part of a different calendar system. It's the one that we have adopted in the West, which is not one that's based on stars moving or lunar cycles, which is where Polynesian based their calendars on lunar cycles because it related to food and food production and harvesting fish in the sea because they understood the relationship between the moon, the tides, the fish, harvesting, blah blah blah. Same with the sweet potato and when to plant sweet potatoes. So I just read through because I could never remember this because there's a lot of big Māori words. Matariki, that's the mother star, associated with health, reflection, and gathering. Pahutakawa is another star that connects in that system, connects to the deceased, helping to remember loved ones who have passed away. Tuapunuku is associated with food that grows in the ground and cultivating crops. Tapuarangi, or Atlas, is linked to food from above, such as the birds and the berries. Waiiti is associated with fresh water and food sources. Waita is associated with the ocean and seafood. Waipunurangi is associated with the rain. And Ururangi is associated with the wind. And the last one, Hiwa Tiarangi, is the wishing star connected to hopes, dreams, and prosperity. So that just shows that sort of connection through story and narrative and the recognition of all of these values that are kind of like a framing for how to live and how to show respect and guardianship and honor. So I think, I guess here, if every Maori place name has a story with it. It's not just named after a famous person. And so stories and narrative and how we live and how we wayfind is really closely linked together. I said I wanted to sort of lay a platform for a conversation. And I guess this is where I'm saying that we've got a lot to learn from looking back on indigenous ways of understanding environments and moving into places that are unknown. When Maori first came to Aotearoa, they'd gone from a tropical environment with tropical food into a subtropical environment with completely different species, completely different flora and fauna. They had to learn how to survive in this place, learn how to create medicine from the plants and harvest different things. So there there's there's much to be unearthed that we could begin to talk about from time through to wayfinding. And I'll yeah, I just want to open it up. Maybe Gordon, you might want to pick up on some things because just to introduce Gordon a little bit more. So, as Gordon was telling me, when he didn't mention this before, but when he was 6, he was recognized as a child prodigy artist, and had his first solo art exhibition at the age of 6. So he was a really gifted visual artist, who went to art school in Amsterdam from Arizona, Phoenix, was it? Um,
Sedona,
right.
near half middle of the state, the Sonoran
Yeah, yeah,
Desert.
yeah, yeah. And whose father was Hopi, which opens up another whole storyline, um, because there is this very interesting connection between the Hopi and Maori as well. Um, and then only to be told that when he was 14 that he would lose his eyesight and be totally blind, which for anybody, for myself, who was told um, just before Christmas that I was likely to lose all my eyesight as a visual artist as well, um, is quite daunting. Hopefully, I've got on top of that. I remain positive. But Gordon turned that threat of losing, or the actuality of losing blind sight, into his superpower, as he explained to me. And that superpower was to create things for others, to enable others. And this is where we both really aligned, because my work and my history has gone through different things. And a lot of my work has been around creating things for disabled people at the National Home for the Disabled, and working in psychopedic hospitals, and working in brain injury. And really, I've always been somebody who's fought for the underdog, and fought for inclusion and other perspective. So I've been really blessed to have this connection with Gordon and his partner, and have the enormous amount of skill that Gordon brings, that has helped enlighten me, and given me some hope about how we might move forward. So yeah, I'll leave it for Gordon now.
Well, that is such a wonderful buildup. I so thank you for the kind thoughts. Truth is, I like to think of myself as a humble person from the back country. Um, I had to learn how to be more outgoing and outspoken uh, when it was determined that I'd be going blind, and it was already a challenge for me. I'd kind of I didn't interact a lot when I was a kid, other than painting, drawing, and hanging out in the wild places. And I spent a great deal of time with the ruins of a vanished civilization, the canyons in which our ranch was. People had lived for thousands of years, and 1,000 years before the Europeans arrived, they had cleared out. And the answer I learned through archaeology and science people is the climate had changed, and the agricultural produce that they had relied on, that they'd cultivated and built vast canal systems, a very sophisticated culture, very skilled in architecture, and they had vanished. And so living in their canyon, the shadows there, I looked at their art, I sat in their doorways, I gave it a lot of thought. It seemed to me in the fullness of things that being open to the possibility that my civilization might be around or challenged in another 4,000 years was kind of where I started, like a thought experiment. And then I was at school down in Phoenix at the Arizona State University as a second grader. And while I was there, we had to do duck and cover drills for nuclear war so that we wouldn't be vaporized by nuclear bombs. We had to hide under our desks, and the teacher would turn off the lights. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I'm from a species that's insane. I wondered, how do you feel when you become insane? Is it 13, 15, 18, 21? I didn't have an answer, but I knew that in my heart, it seemed the stories people told themselves about the enemy and the others and the world outside, made them fearful, and they just kept regenerating those stories. And I thought, as an artist and a storyteller, my challenge might be to use stories and the ability to use my artistic talent to bring better stories to people. And so I ended up being a big piece in the middle that I hadn't gotten mentioned, as I'm a documentary filmmaker as well. And I made programs about astronomy and space science. And I worked with indigenous tribes in Arizona to make sure their culture was preserved. And I did it for the tribes, not to show outside, but to preserve medicine ways. And I had the good fortune of being, as a grad student up at Northern Arizona University, I got enrolled in a research program. It was parapsychology, funded by the government at the time under a secret program. And they had worked it out with elders from Hopi and Navajo, Dene, and other tribes to participate in research and brain neurofeedback and altered states of consciousness. And we went into hogans with sophisticated equipment and measured brain waves and ceremony with lights and sound. And we learned that altered states of consciousness give access to other ways of understanding and taking in information. And so, with all of those experiences in my background, as I contemplated impending blindness and I worked in the field of journalism as a television person, I realized that my graphic design ability and animation skills gave me an edge. And the work I did was for television, which in those days wasn't very sharp picture anyway. And so I did very well and became kind of successful at that. And that taught me to use tools to better express vision and ideas. And I started building head mounted displays with micro cameras to give me a way, when my vision became worse, to navigate the built environment, to be able to move around in the world and do so without being dependent on other people, things like that. So I kind of wanted to see if I couldn't make AI tools work for the pattern recognition they could provide. And my brother, who was an astrophysicist, also had the same vision challenge I did. So we together had access to good tools and research in that area. And we worked hard at that. And I ended up using my skills to work in the electronics industry. And then I got a couple companies behind me and ended up in Silicon Valley, where I ended up pioneering virtual reality, of all things. I hadn't planned to do it. I was working on tools for helping people with vision impairment, but the business people didn't think that was a good idea, and they didn't want to give me any money. So I had to pivot, as they call it, and I started working on virtual reality. And pretty soon, I built the world's first digital twin metaverse in the capital of Silicon Valley with video conferencing avatars back in 1997. And we tested it on my cable network. I had set up the US first broadband cable data network then. And we had a smart network, and we started experimenting. And so ever since then, I've been looking at the idea of how place-based information, knowledge about where we are and what's around us, and things that are within our interest are the really amazing worlds we're about to inhabit. The tools of tomorrow are coming fast. The companies, Nokia and Ericsson, kind of pioneered these things, but they've been picked up in Japan and Korea, China, moving fast. And in the US, some companies we have are working on it also. Yeah. But it's actually an integration of edge computing, meaning in your neighborhood, and an integration of high-speed mesh networks where you no longer have cell services, but everything around you radiates with signals that keep us all hooked up at a terabit per second speed, which makes it possible to do an extraordinary level of high speed and effective media. And the best part, if you're a media person is it's close by, it's in the neighborhood. You don't have to go up into the clouds across the planet to get it. And so the big companies, this is a cost saving measure. So they're real interested in it. And we're trying to get ahead of them to say to communities, hey, this is for you. You can do this right here at home. It could be member owned cooperatives. And best of all, it could be a commons shared by the people as a prosperity that we invest in and make happen together. And so
This
there's,
is yeah, Gordon. Sorry, because it can, often I think when we start talking about technology, a lot of people are just anti-technology because they only see the corporate side of it and what's
yes,
thrown upon us, and and it kind of like sets up an immediate barrier um, to people, and what we've talked about, which you're just touching on, which is why I rudely interrupted you, was that the approach that we've talked about and that you've done, and we both shared a very common patent that we'd secured years ago at the onset of some of this technology that was really focused on empowering communities and empowering the disenfranchised from that point of view. And so, it's a whole different approach and need for a different recognition for a different business model.
yes.
And for me, I always felt it's a little bit when I created the Talking Forest, it was counterintuitive because I was using a little piece of technology to lure young people into a natural environment um, and to hold their attention in that environment and make an awareness, and then to get rid of the technology because they had formed that bond. And I think
Uh-huh.
that was something that was lost on people who only saw that as, oh, we can't go anywhere without technology. So, yeah, I just
Understood.
wanted to add that point because um, so much of what we're talking about is how we re-empower people, and how we
Oh,
can
absolutely.
actually work together to bring this stuff
Yes.
about because we're faced against the big corporate machines.
Well,
Um,
I think in those terms entirely. What I learned from virtual reality and the research that was going on in that field that I got exposed to was that the envelope of a human being in their sensory and interaction, the senses that we bring to the equation, is the good part. And the more we have to contort and bend that to suit the will of the machine builders, the worse the experience is, and the more we exclude people. So embracing our humanity is the trick all the way, and the least technology is the answer. I see it as a tool that we can use. And then from there, it can be a cue, something that remembers us. And everyone today is kind of plugged into the mobile world. So it's an unavoidable sort of reality. However, in the near future, the environment around us, if we can trust it with our information, and we can, if it's our information and it's available only to ourselves, encrypted and built into the machinery to protect us and knows who we are, we're able to be in a different environment than when we've been used to. The idea of making the technology disappear is definitely on my list of things. It should be like magic, as Arthur Clarke said once. Good technology should seem like magic. And in truth, if we were an advanced civilization, which is kind of how I like to set my guide, somewhere out in the future, an unimaginable 1,000 years from now, who would imagine that people would be hauling around chunks of glass in their pocket or conferring on, pieces of window glass in the wall? We have a better world ahead just around the corner, and it'll be queuing off of our humanness and and giving us the kind of human support for humans, designed by humans for humans, and delivering the missing elements that the machines can help us with. And so I kind of hope that we'll resolve the problem that I'm most concerned about is people disappearing into this virtual artificial realm and forgetting their humanity. And how long would it take us to devolve in that sense when people no longer, the 65% of people that no longer have contact with nature, find themselves completely engaged in virtual worlds and interacting with virtual entities? Um, does the human language become lost to uh, that approach, and we become manipulated by it? And so the concern is very real about how we use it as a tool as creators, or we experience it as people that are going to benefit. Yep, I'm with you on that 100%.
Yeah, I just wonder, if people got questions that they, thoughts that they want to share with everything that Gordon has spoken about so far, because it's such a deep conversation.
I can pick up where I left off in the last session because I'm so hopeful about what is just about to happen. And uh, interestingly, I could sort of see reflections, not as a child prodigy, but in Gordon's life. I switched off when I was 4 years old. And then I decided if I was going to live on this planet, I had to have a look at what was going on. And so when I was 16, I decided to look around at the world. And that was the moment at which I realized, as he said, the species is insane. And so I started writing papers on economics and government and all sorts of stuff, realizing that all of it was a hoax, that there are completely different ways of doing things. And so over the years, I've begun to seek those ways in which every child on earth can find their own empowerment to the point of thriving. And technology is part of that ambience. You know, I'm one of the founders of LETS in Britain, the local exchange trading systems. If you haven't got a decent computer base, then you can't have a local exchange system that is fast, efficient, and functional and serves everybody without interest or inflation or whatever. So that's a very simple application of a very simple level of technology that says, yes, we can do this. But the empowerment that I'm seeking is, for me, wrapped up in where you began, Dave, with this conversation about time, because here in North Wales, I'm sort of vested in the landscape of the Druids. And the Druidic landscape, as you described, with the sort of, what was your term? Something about place-based information, I think it was, that Welsh describes the landscape to put you in place. So every house is called after the place it is, or next to the river it's on, or whatever, you know, and names. People then begin to find family names that are traceable to the landscape. And it's all, it's indigenous, but there are no indigenous elders left. And I find myself almost going into trance. And people tell me I was a druid thousands of years ago. And so I feel as though I'm intuitively picking up on what was in this landscape. And what intrigues me in terms of time is that we all know that a day is determined by the Earth spinning. We all know that a year is determined because the Earth goes around the sun. And we all know, well, do we, that the Earth wobbles. And that gives us a great year. So what we don't normally recognize is that the day is basically 50% dark and 50% light. And it's got those two moments called dawn and dusk, which are very quick. They might be, 10 minutes in the middle of the darkest winter, just the lights go out. And because we're at the equinox now, this is the moment of the fastest change. The solstices at the other 2 points are stationary. Every day is the same length, both in summer and winter. But at the equinoxes, every day is 20 minutes longer than the day before. There's very fast change going on. So we have exactly the same as we do with dawn and dusk. There's 2 moments of transition, and then you have a constancy. And what few people seem to be recognizing in this moment is that the great day, the great year, is 26,000 years, but it has two fast points. At the 13,000 year mark, it just goes bananas. It accelerates. So in Eastern tradition, we're going from a Kali Yoga to a Sat Yoga. We're doing a very fast transition that is total. And that's why our civilization is 13,000 years old, because 13,000.
Oh, you're frozen.
The time stopped for him. You see?
Ah, yeah, frozen in time.
13,000. I always pay attention to where the time stops.
I think
Tis the druids.
his laptop probably ran out of battery.
Right. Just it's funny because Michael was talking about the druid thing, and my grandfather was the Grand Druid of New Zealand, so we've got that little connection. And whakapapa, which is your genealogy, is really important in Māoridom. You know, where you come from, who you're connected to, and that's one way of telling time. And what was I going to say? Mua and muri. Mua is what is mua? It is the past, which Māori see as in front of you, and Māori is where am I? Muri is behind you, and the idea is that you can look back into the past, but you can't look into the future. So the future is actually behind you. And I think I've heard other Indigenous people say the same thing, the same concept. Anyway, hopefully he'll be back on.
I have something coming up, like a question or just a thought for speaking about disconnection from nature and technology, and just something that's thought about for a while and how technology is applied. But before that, the awakening of the senses, like I don't remember if it was in David Abrams' Spell of the Sensuous or if it was Becoming Animal, but how he described it's like every sense, just that awakening. So whether that's technology or whether that's in nature, I feel like it doesn't really matter. But why, with all the tech, the tech that's not being applied great, by some, I've wanted this for decades. Why not use that, like that virtual reality technology, to help people connect with nature, to help senses, to help us become more empathetic? Then it's like I don't have a problem with it. But to be able to be outside, or just not even outside, but to be able to just experience that awakening of senses, I think does bring us into a much deeper connection with Earth. And I'll just add, this is something David Bohm was one of the things he was most concerned about, and how he defined cosmos was nature and the disconnection he saw with humans and nature, and the no more wilding. Just not even just being outside, like, the wildness of outside. So rewilding ourselves, being good in right relationship in order to allow that. So anyway, I'm just holding the technology question. I love this technology here that connects us. That helps us come alive. I feel like our whole inquiry group certainly did a deep ecological mindset set in, which was like a combination of being here and being out. So anyway, those are, as we talk about technology and nature.
Yeah,
And
that's like two sides of the coin, isn't it, Kim? Because I find that having this ability to see your face, to see, um, and for Gordon particularly, to pick up the intonation and tone of the voice, because
yeah,
when you lose one sense, your other super senses kick in. and really take over. So that sense of place, if you're in a forest and you can smell, you can hear, you can touch. When I did the talking forest, I thought the only thing that was missing was the voice of the conservationist to be able to explain where you were. And because I had worked in head injury and brain injury and understanding how the brain sort of takes shortcuts, and we begin to not notice things or not deeply see that we need, and along with these distracting technologies that are reducing our ability to stay on target, to concentrate, concentrate and hold attention. It is technology is both a challenge because we're using it so badly and a wonderful opportunity. So design is really important, which is why I'm really excited about these sorts of collections of people because we come from different perspectives. And Gordon and I even share a connection to Arizona State University because I'm part of the innovation lab there that hasn't done anything since Trump came along and got jumped on the diversity, equity, and inclusion thing. But the idea of the innovation lab was to bring people from different disciplines to design instead of just leaving it for technologists to design systems for us without understanding our geography and geologies and all those other humanities. Anyway, good point.
I had to work around. I had to work around that myself. Silicon Valley. I always tried to speak to my peers in terms that understand. I would say it's the spec on human beings. That is to say, from cradle to grave, eh? Not just the 20-year-old testosterone-filled guys who have programming, eh? And so I've been trying for years to get people to understand that it's about inclusion. So in truth, I have had a dual career. I work in this advanced area of technology, and at the same time, 50 years now, I've been a disability advocate, and couldn't be greater contrast in the resourcing and communities. We have in the US only 19% of people with disabilities have jobs. And that's way lower than every other minority group, no matter what. It's not even a minority, it's 120 million, almost 50, over 50% of the population. So it's just an extraordinary thing that something that is a natural aspect of life and living, aging and impairment, that it goes unnoticed by people who like to sell consumer products and things. So for me, it's the height of stupidity. I thought these people went to business school. Don't they have business degrees? I thought they were taught to pay attention to the market. The customer is always right. What happened to that? And so it's one of the very odd things, the cultural bias that in the US I've experienced as a person with a disability. And the impoverishment of that sort of society is so severe and pernicious that by helping people, they keep them in a place where they can't advance at all. So it's just an extraordinary problem that I intend to do something about by looking at the problem a little differently. And that is 120 million people represent about 70 million registered voters, and taking it on as a technology infrastructure conceptual art project. We're creating a political action committee that will pull together the AI components for a distributed network of archiving of all the necessary documentation from the community, which we've been collecting for over 15 years. So we're thinking of fermenting a bit of evolution, as it were, using tech, but low tech, appropriate tech, off the tech, best of all. And we're not getting stuck in anyone's walled garden. We're doing it in a distributed, community-based fashion. So there's hope. It's just being creative is the trick. Finding a way to work around the impairment. Maybe a problem isn't a problem; it's an opportunity. That's been my life's kind of focus. If there's something in the way, why is it there? How did that happen? And then, is there not another way to do this? If I can't find another option, perhaps it needs to be reinvented. And that's where Bucky Fuller was so strong to say, if you can't solve a problem in a society, reinvent around it. And that's where we're at today, is thinking out of the box about how we get represented. And when I think of the presentation about the gangsterism and mafias polluting all of the corrupting the government and commerce, very similar around the world, big problem. But just think, what if we began networking more effectively as neighborhoods? If we started growing our own food locally, thank you very much. If we didn't rely on imported fuels, if we started taking it as a community challenge, that we need to find a way that the kids alive today can still share in what we've had up until now as an opportunity to live with, we would hope, without war and without scarcity, especially fear, false scarcity created by the people that like to manipulate. Yeah. People's the way, people power.
Yeah, that idea, bringing things up and possibilities and whatnot. So often I hear people just say, "Oh, well, I don't have time," so, which takes us right back to the whole idea of time thing. And I think about that great Monty Python movie, The Time Bandits. Um, it's so true that those accountants are just robbing us of time and all of this distraction. Um, when yeah, we just need to find a way of breaking out of that. And Artie, I mentioned that Gordon and I were talking about well-being as well, and and some of the things that he's talking about, some of the approaches has been what I've been planning to roll out here. And I called the project Tapestry because tapping on to the recent conversation about AI, that was, I don't know, Alexander, a week ago or probably less, with Robbie Stamp, who's closely tied to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Um, the idea of being able to use distributed networks with small AI agents that are relational to the environment around them is a way of getting people back out and into an environment and seeing the environment as a connected mycelium weave of things. And myself and a young Māori guy, we built a very easy example using the idea of an iPo. And a po in Māori is like a totem to Indians. It is a post which has your ancestors carved into it. And so the post has a story, an ancestral story with it. If you walk into a Māori meeting house in Marae, you'll see the po in the meeting house with all of the ancestors alive in there. And the panels on the wall, which are woven, are like a hydro, it's like a language that is woven into the thing. Anyway, the idea of iPo is that now we can create po and we'll use this in our local park where you can walk up and getting away from apps, just put your phone near it and that object will start to sing to you, recite a poem, or tell you about its history or its biology, and then you can have a conversation with it. And the conversation is information generated by a local community because doing this learning, while I was in the park yesterday, there was a school trip there, a classroom, and I went and sat with the teacher and told them about this project and getting the kids involved in looking at the park and studying the biology and the flora and the fauna and creating content because it enriches them in doing. And so, just to explain, as you walk up to, like I have a 2,000-year-old pūrere tree, which has a rich Māori mythology. It's a tree that connects the heavens to the earth. It's a tree as it gets older, hollows out in the middle. So So when somebody passes away, sometimes the bones would be put in the tree to send them to heaven. Um, so it's got this mythology around it, but it's also got rongo medicine that they use the leaves for. So so Shannon and I wrote a poem based on the mythology, and then we used technology to put that poem to music, so that when you walk up to the tree, it sings to you. Because we didn't want just conversations; we wanted the emotional connection, and using art, which has that whole area of shadow, for your personal interpretation of what you're seeing and what you're hearing and what you're touching and smelling. But then the second part of that is that now with AI and weaving it into a distributed network, that tree will understand its relationship with the other plants around it. So it will be able to say, well, you should go down this pathway and talk to the ginkgo, which comes from China. That has a completely different history and a very interesting fellow to talk to. And so it becomes a playful thing for for the community to get involved in. My approach is always keep it simple, and you keep it inclusive. People like Gordon know how to do the engineering of this sort of stuff, and same with Shannon as well. But doing it in one place, we it just gets richer as the tapestry grows, and as the tapestry grows, we start to become more indigenous to the place that we live in. Alexander.
Beautiful. And the power of technology as art in such a way that it augments our capacity to connect and reminds us of our connections. You see, I think the thing is, I think the thing is, like, geez, what did I do? I think the thing is that we actually know how to get near anything and have it sing to us. We've forgotten a lot about this. But if we are truly present, everything sings. And everything can sing to us and tell us its story if we know how to listen, being truly present. But because we have forgotten so much and we've become technology dependent rather than technology enabled, if the technology can help us remember this and stimulate this ability again in us without creating a dependency, that now we can't hear anything unless we have the technology to have it sing to us. See, that would not be good. But if it can remind us that we know how to do this and that we can do this all the time, I think that's tremendously powerful. So again, technology as enabler and empowerer of what it means to human well, as we say, to human well with all that is around us. The last thing on this is just the difference between having, somebody said this so nicely about our engagement with AI. It's about dealing with weight. For example, we can either think of it as enabling us to be better weightlifters or better forklifters. So the forklift is where we use the technology to lift up very heavy things, but it makes us weaker in the process. We don't do any of the lifting itself because it does it all for us. If, on the other hand, the technology can enable us to be better weightlifters and train us to do this, then we get stronger and we get more empowered to be able to lift that weight, right? So the analogy is between weightlifting and forklifting in the way in which AI we interact with AI. Again, is to become technology enabled, not technology dependent. And there's so much of that now where we're becoming so technology dependent. We can't navigate anywhere unless we have our phone because it has the GPS in it and we're lost otherwise. So those kind of things, to know the Polynesian wayfarers who could sense the currents and go through what really looks like uncharted vast areas of ocean that to us seem so differentiated, but they can read it because they have that literacy to be able to read the currents and all the changes around them. They can listen well. So the technology that enables and empowers that without weakening us, I think that is beautiful, because nature sings to us. All things sing all the time. So I love the idea, again, provided that it helps us in the weightlifting, doesn't create us to be better forklifters.
That is why I said when I delivered my first talk in 2006, the Inside Out Museum, the speakers after me were two Japanese speakers that had developed some technology as well for wayfinding in a museum. And they had created a way of looking at a device and seeing the vase in front of them on the device. And to me, that was kind of pointless because the real thing was in front of you. Um, and my approach was just to provide the bit that was missing and then not to have to use the device because you would establish a relationship. The device, it was like a mousetrap. You nibble the cheese, make something nice, and you got them. And then they had that understanding and their brain, because I'd come from neuroscience, exactly about the weightlifting thing. So how to craft it, because that 2,000-year-old tree sits in that park and some people know about the tree, but what will draw them in and have them connect with that mythology? And then when they're walking past, they don't need their phone. They can say, hey, there's that singing tree. Um, let's go and have a look in the hole. Did you know that they used to put bones inside that tree? So it's just a methodology. Ari, Ati.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Thank you for that lovely weaving. It's just beautiful. And Gordon, what an inspiration. I think the amount of careers you've held in your life, there's no way that you wouldn't know at least something about everything. So thank you for showing up and sharing that with us. But you know what I actually want to share, and before I do that, Kim, how much time do we have for the session left? 1 minute? Okay.
Yeah,
So I
but the thing
actually,
is that this session goes through to the next one because
all right.
I've got 9, 10, and 11 to try and cover. So
Amazing. Amazing.
stuck here
So
for a
what
while.
I wanted to tell you was that day before I got invited into the first deliberation by UNESCO and the ITU on writing the governance framework on AI. All right. So there's a statement that I've put out there, and I think it's about 2.5 minutes long. If you'd allow me, I'd love to read that out to you. All
Go for
right,
it.
so it says, greetings from India, Your Excellencies, and blah, blah. So it essentially begins from, at this point, I would like to cite a study from Stanford and UC Berkeley. The researchers discovered that ChatGPT's math accuracy fell from 97.6% to 2.4% in June 2023. It is now beyond speculation that AI is aggregating what we humans are uploading from our collective histories, impacted wisdom, and receding understanding of our life location, both in the universe and time. The frameworks we need for AI, interestingly, lie in mainstreaming of social technologies such as Ubuntu, the Vedic philosophy, Wabi Sabi, and more, which serve as binders of social cohesion and help us deliver on the promise of intellectual, cultural, and performance cohesion. The present day lack of such a mechanism of social engagement and our comfort to gamble with life nurturing values are deeply misaligned with the unfailing laws of nature and sacred creation. All our institutions of industry, governance, healthcare, finance, education, family systems, human to national security, and the ecosystem of us are therefore under cyber, physical, and mental threat, creating a global high tension loop challenged by the problem of intention. We are at a juncture where we need to broad range our understanding, awareness, and acceptance of sentience. The spiral out of a single-celled organism was, is, and will always be an extension of the preceding link in the chain of that continuity. If we do not repurpose and justify our birthing to this idea of being in service as a link in the chain of continuity, we can never exercise discernment, and therefore AI will be weaponized like every other discovery of tools and trades since the cave era on Earth to now in outer space. And may I point out that service is where our free will truly lies. I therefore request this forum to expand the policy, governance, and advocacy purview to build transdisciplinary direction for human thinking towards the philosophy biology and cosmology of life existence, and begin deciphering and articulating the deeper systemic function of the Anthropocene within the domain of nature, thus promoting a respectful culture of human thrivability, our regulatory and operational framework will emerge from our renewed understanding of our construct as life. Right? So, thank you, Alexander. Oh, where did Gordon go? Sorry about that, if I overshot. But yeah, this is the objective, right?
Yes. Hopefully, he hasn't lost power. You can never tell on Honolulu with the current weather, because he's got so much to offer.
Yeah.
But you know,
Brilliant.
so do yourself.
Yeah.
And I'd like to, you know, because we're talking really about this other ways of deep connection and those things that has he come back? Oh no, somebody else is gone. Alexander's
No, Alexander had to sort of exit. Well, that's all right.
yeah. Sorry, yeah.
We've done two people connectathon also. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, I
So
was
we have four
worried I was
people
going to
here.
be. Yeah, I was worried I was going to be by myself. Just talking to my screen. Um, you know, this the weaponization of these technologies. Here in New Zealand, we have a company called Rocket Lab that this young guy has done very well, making affordable way of firing rockets up into the atmosphere. Just recently, when he started out and got the first investors, none of what he was doing was going to go towards military
Yeah.
means. He just signed a massive contract with the Department of War that will give them all the money he needs for war. You know, this is
Dear
this
Lord.
insanity of it.
I must tell you, Dave, and Sumit he lives in Dubai. So I don't know if you visited this, the air show that happened, I think, end of November. It was more like a military demonstration of literally some 50 odd geographies. And the moment you enter the premises, it said electronic warfare in like bright, flashy letters, like right at the end of Hitchhikers, right? Large friendly letters, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And the moment I walked in, I realized that there are lesser visitors than the number of military personnel on site. So when you look at how protection, travel, it said air show, right? So how each of our institutions are by design built for weaponization. So we call it the military industrial complex, right from education to food to name it. I mean, even family systems for that matter. We are proud when we have sons as Marines or on the front line, right?
Yeah, we
So
have
there's
statues
it's
to
insane that
veterans, and not
yeah,
scientists.
exactly. It's insane that 8 billion people have to live on a single format.
Yeah.
So would
And
you
so, you know, thinking in terms of Hawaii, and working with, I wrote a children's story, Lani and the Lay,
oh,
and it
lovely.
was for Uncle Bumpy, who started the sovereignty movement on Hawaii. And
Okay.
it was just after the Lahania fire, right? So he wanted to express what the spirit of aloha really means, because there's a bit like the stars in Matariki. There are a number of aspects of aloha that sort of wisdom to share across the islands and to bring the islands all together. I'm getting distracted, but it looking at Hawaii, and you know that was an island that was taken over first by the sugar industry, the sugarcane
Yeah.
industry, who got rid of the Queen of Hawaii, who lived in Lahania, and imprisoned her, burnt down their village, and then built the colonial village there, planted the sugar cane. The sugar cane were a big part of that whole fire that destroyed the village. The village got destroyed. Underneath the village was the taonga, the treasures of the village that was built over the top of. So
Oh,
there is a little bit of
right.
justice in
Uh,
what happened with that. But and so because my story about Lani, the girl who's got this natural spirit of aloha, who makes lei that she gives to the animals, lives with
mm,
her grandfather, and this is all part of the wayfinding, because her grandfather reads the sea and the clouds, and then he sees the albatross coming inland. He sees the
mm,
hermit crabs moving up off the beach. He sees the native hawk going up into the mountains, and he
mm,
knows there's going to be a big storm coming. So they lash down their little fale, bring the waka, the canoes on shore, and prepare for the storm. That night, he tells Lani, this young girl, his granddaughter that he lives with, about her being a descendant of the queen, and how she holds the spirit, this natural spirit
play.
of aloha, and why she makes lei to give to different people. And so the next morning, they're walking towards the town because they've seen the fire at the night time. And they're walking along the beach towards the town that's been destroyed. And she sees the hermit crabs. And a big hermit crab comes out of his shell, and a little hermit crab climbs into it. And then another one climbs into the next one's shell. And this is something I watched on the islands when I was staying with the Queen of Rarotonga. There's a line of hermit crabs from the biggest to the smallest, swapping shells, moving up. And she says to her grandfather, Lahania isn't our home. It's only buildings like shells. Our home is Maui, the island. So we have to go and tell the people that our real home is the island, and not to grieve too much for the houses that have been built down because we've outgrown them. So she has this insight. And then as they get closer, the old sea turtle comes up out of the sea, and he digs up the conch shell, because the sea turtle, 300 years old, knew the conch shell was buried under the village.
Oh,
And that's the bit that was true, is that they found the conch shell that's used to bring people together. And so my point is that a story can illustrate things from a child's point of view that can help families when they share stories, make plans and navigate and whatnot, especially if stories are threaded with stories upon stories. And so what I do to do connected to well-being is that as you enter the Imaginarium, the school of possibilities, where these stories that are different tropes to the American stories are
God.
found. As you read a story, you get well-being tokens
Mm,
that feed your heart, your head, and your hands, which are your agreements to do things in your community, your environment. And those well-being tokens that you earn, you can gift to children in other parts of the world so they can get access to the resources of the stories, um, that are all threaded together and connecting to science. So a very simple way of weaving all of this stuff that empowers communities, um, to engage, and just playing on the well-being idea that the beings are well-beings to make well-beings. Anyway,
Great. By
that's
the way, Gordon's back with us, so
Where that was just where I left too. We were talking about wellness, which
right.
which I think is a wonderful concept. Unfortunately, here in the us, we've had this discussion about health care, and we've had health care systems, and it's a nightmare, of course, needless to say. Everyone's heard about it. But I noticed over in Scotland, they call it wellness, and it includes housing, employment, food
yeah.
security, all the things that you might consider why that makes sense, directly related to someone's wellness in a community. And the embrace of it is much more to my liking. I think what's happened is we've had a drift to a kind of libertarian philosophy of every person, clawing their way to the top. It's been modeled in all the media for so long. But I think now people have seen the kind of desolate world that we've ended up with as far as charm and joy and and equity and prosperity. And we're seeing it squandered, the treasure of the world and the destruction of things, which is so unbelievably sickening. And so, with that in mind, everyone's up for new and a better idea. And if you've been sitting on better ideas, good time to bring them out. I'm all about that.
Amazing.
I'm now 73 years old. I didn't intend to get this old. I had no thought I would, and I'm quite shocked to find it's true. I still think I'm a young man full of promise. But that being said, I think it's time, late in the day, as it were. So I'm putting it all to the pedal to the metal. Wellness, right on.
73 is the
Absolutely.
new 42.
I think
Oh.
Gordon should take in Marina's presentation in hour 2. That was about from Living Cities Care or L Care. There was one slide
Wonderful.
yeah, this one I saved here, and it's called The Dual Lenses of Urban Experience. And there's happiness of consumption and happiness of creation and care. And the questions with consumption, the question, are the conditions adequate? Are people satisfied? And the limit is treats the citizen purely as a consumer of external services. But when you look through another lens, the happiness of creation and care, the question is, are people participating in creating and stewarding this domain? The frontier measures agency, contribution, and co-stewardship. So there were lots of ideas like that in this framework. I think, yeah, I would love for you to connect with Marina, Gordon.
I insist. That would be just wonderful. I sort of have it in mind that if we all take a new tack, and that is to use the arts and the science and the people that have ideas around us and bring us all together to just petition, that's a word that is guaranteed in the First Amendment of the US Constitution, the right to petition the government. And in truth, we have vehicles for doing that in the political machinery, which is overlooked by anyone who has a conscience and doesn't hang out in smoke-filled rooms. Who would think of political action? But I did one many years ago on behalf of community public access cable TV, which I truly believed in and still do. And it still continues to some degree here in Hawaii, actually. But with that in mind, the idea of having some stake in the prosperity that's derived from the industry that is uh, extracting from our communities. And here in Hawaii, nothing could be clearer that the imbalance is unjust and creating such a spatial injustice for the people of these islands that we have to do something about it. And end of the day, it's going to come to the matter of using fuel from fossil, which doesn't make sense for us, or going our own way. And so it's kind of one of those moments. And here's a point in time where crazy artists like myself can jump out and say, hey, I'm an artist futurist. Here's an idea. Why not cover our streets with solar panels and put electric automated tramways overhead that can move people and freight? And we can return the streets to riparian areas, food forests, water features. We can capture the rainwater. We can provide pollution-free island-style communities down here on the ground, put in greenhouses, make our own food, have a better world that people would be enjoying if they came as tourists. Whereas now we have 1.4 million cars and we have 1.1 million people. So that's like kind of convenient, I guess, but it doesn't seem very nice.
We
So,
like we
and our,
have, yeah. we have all the potential solutions in the world when we look at things. And I think about when I went to Rarotonga, um, invited by Pa'ariki, who is the Ariki or the chief there. So she wanted me to go there. She said, Dave, you've got to come to Rarotonga and solve the problem of diabetes. I'm not a medical person, but I thought, oh, well, I will go anyway. But so there, the World Bank funded a aqua project, food aqua product project with solar panels over the roof, the fish farm for fish to eat because their reefs are poisoned by the rubbish being buried on properties close to the sea, and food growing out of the water, aquaponics. And so it was a great opportunity to look at a whole system approach. But the reality was that when they didn't have visitors coming to the island to have a look at this thing, the government closed it down because they didn't want to showcase solar panels when they were making money out of the diesel-based power station. And so with all of these things, you're up against the industry that is in there the most. And as I found when I set up an open flow network to give remote rural communities access to high-speed internet, I got shut down by the telcos and I got shut down by the Five Eyes Agreement, which was the agreement that allowed America to spy on our citizens without saying so. And there was no way to spy on people when there was an open flow network running high-speed internet in a peer-to-peer system. So this is our challenge here, is that how do we leverage and execute these opportunities, these solutions, which is where I think like reaching the local idea and then spreading from community to community. Yeah, is an approach. And just to finish on that, an example in Hawaii that you're aware of, Gordon, is of course Uncle Bumpy and the First Nations, who he was locked up for protesting. And then when he was released, they took it to court because President Clinton had acknowledged in a legal letter that they'd stolen the land off the native Hawaiians. And so for payment, they gave the nation of Hawaii a small patch of land, right, up in the hills, land that was considered not of great value. Get them out of the way, up into the hills. What they did there was that they restored the Kanaka water fields, the rock fields that fed the water through planting systems for their taro and everything else. And they got the community involved in restoring these big boulder systems that went up the sides of the mountain. So it became a place, it became its own self-sustaining village. And an example of how to do things and empower people in the process using traditional techniques that have been forgotten about. End of my story.
All right. So Dave and Gordon, I think this is just so amazing that, I mean, you got shut down. So this is a classic example of how the mainstream governance systems work in cahoot with what's on the sidelines, and how those systems are so tightly enmeshed. And you spoke about, how do we look at multiple things at the same time, what kind of integrated solutioning can come up with. And I'd love to share this with you at some point, but just briefly. So the model that I'm working on, and this is about curating pathways individually and then letting them weave together once, a substantial amount has been sort of curated. And the model is called, let me just put that in chat. I've already typed it out. It's called Infuse. It's pronounced as infuse and it's spelled as INFE, 3 times W and S. And it stands for infrastructure, food security, energy systems, waste management, water leadership, well-being and security of all life. So now what I'm personally doing is I'm reaching out to the local politicians. And I'm asking them very simply, do you have the appetite to create a legacy and solve legacy challenges? I'm literally asking that question. So of course they're going to say yes. And I'm going to them with numbers. I'm going to them with projections. It's like, it's like the Godfather statement, make them an offer they can't refuse. So I'm trying to, it's about, literally preempting how dark is the dark side and what is the potential of throwing some light in there. Otherwise, otherwise it's all like one of the older films by Kurt Russell, Escape from LA. I'm still scared of that film, because I think the world is increasingly becoming like that. But till the time we're not looking at integrated challenges and developing solutions that respond to multiple things at the same time, and the envisioning has to be such that, you're already thinking of solutions because that's a logical way of doing it. But the thing is that these decision makers don't have a goddamn appetite. So what you do, you give them a head start on each of these things and show them how their vote bank is going to benefit and give them the moral brownie points that they otherwise wouldn't get. So it's almost like I'm actually educating a lot of other people also on this, that, you can do all the social work, but when you're going and asking for money, that's the only time you should speak their language. Otherwise, there's no point. I mean, it's like blood transfusion, when you've got a disease, and I love saying this, you don't empty the man, right? It's a high precision parallel surgical process. That's the thing with narrative, unfortunately. A lot of blood loss there, but we've not created a better way of doing it.
Yeah. That's 'cause I kind of find some hope in this whole leveraging thing. Like with this particular little project, Tapestry, it's a much bigger concept. But to get it in through our council, which is focused on austerity, and we've got councillors that want to close down the library. Nobody loses libraries anymore. We want more car parks, blah blah blah.
Oh God, that language is
so my approach is to say, okay, so use the fear of missing out. I'm going to do this project here in our world famous park. Don't you worry about the money. I'm going to sort that out. Just let me have access to the park. And by the way, when we do it and we demonstrate it and we collect all of this information that's really useful for people, we're going to replicate that project in Cork with 500,000 people instead of our city with 50 people, or 50,000 people. And so you're going to be, it's addressing their ego.
Yeah.
And, because when I created visual recognition and got the patent for that, it was to solve the immigration problem. And it won the award for the best project undertaken by government for that year. I got an email to say, thank you very much. And all of these politicians walked around shining their lapels and marching up and down and going, yes, yes, we did it. We solved one of our most complex problems. And yeah. So I don't care because we solved the problem. So it's like, how do you play these people? And, having this connection to yourself and Gordon and Marina, Valerie Gleason wrote a really, I took her through my strategy. She wrote a really good strategy paper on how we can do this backing it up with Living Cities Action Research to show the evidence and the process, along with the technology, the delivery, the community engagement. So I think we can give a few Chinese burns to people and appeal to their egos. So yeah, I'm sort of seeing some light, but I'm really tired as well.
Hey, that I threw in the chat share thing down there,
a paper I just put together on using off-the-shelf AI distributed nodes using this new platform they just rolled out, which then allows one to have community-based structure that gives you a local control and local community. So I put it in the form of a community of people with disabilities I've been working with for 15 years. And it's kind of the same tech. And I have way more technical details if anyone would like some.
Yeah,
It
no,
has
that's
bud.
great. Because I think that disability thing is a really good segue into all of this sort of stuff. A good friend of mine who was on one of our other Zoom conferences about inclusion has just become a local counsellor, and she is a disabled person. Well, yes, yeah, yeah. So she's dealing with health problems, raising 3 children, blah blah blah. So I think there's an appetite for it, and it kind of seems safe and it seems morally appropriate that they can't say no. Um, so I think we could be clever about it. Yeah.
A little bit of a tip on disability languaging. It's best to say people with disabilities or person with wheelchair or person who's blind, as it's called people first. It just the emphasis is different.
Yeah, I always struggle with that um describer. You had another one that was a lot better as well. Um
Spec
anyway,
on human
yeah.
beings, universal design.
Spec on humans. Human specs. I like that one myself. Could it be simpler?
So I just I let Jeff into the room, and because Jean has been here for a while, and I just wondered if you had something that you'd like to share with us, Jean or Jeff.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I just joined in just to see how it all works because I'm moderating a session later on in the morning. Yeah, that
From
was it.
Australia, obviously.
I am Australian, but I'm actually sitting in Portugal. That's where I'm living.
All right, we
Hey,
like that. So what's your session going to be on, Jeff?
It's on the question of agriculture. Are we growing food or commodities? So we're going
Right.
to dig into things like the nutritional value of food and whether that's what the priorities are essentially.
Right. This session, well, this has gone my session, unfortunately, because of the hours, has rolled on for it's got a 3 hour segment. And I was thinking, oh God, what we're going to talk about for 3 hours. But fortunately, um, between Gordon and Artie, we don't have any problems there. So we started talking about a question of time and time as perceived by Pacific people, um, and that includes Aboriginal people, and then onto calendar and navigation and wayfinding. And so we've sort of drifted into the whole thing about the inclusive community and community well-being. And
Mm.
so that layer of food, community gardens, etc. It's it's another segue point when we go into that. But we won't jump into your session now because that would be a bit unfair. So yeah, we'll kind of carry on.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks.
Gene. Oh, and we've also got Oz. I wonder where Oz could be from.
Is that the Emerald City?
Yeah, it's either that or Australia. So, Jeff, I'm in New Plymouth or Namutu, Taranaki, New Zealand.
Right.
Hence my accent. Oz, do you want to say something? Introduce yourself. Might be having sound issues. Should we carry on? Where were we?
I'm wondering, Artie, do you and Jean have an hour later
Yes.
today?
Yes, we
Yeah.
do. I think we're at 6 UTC. So that should be in about yeah, in about a few hours, 3, 4 hours.
Yeah, so this will be poetry into action. I mean, he's a beautiful poet, and Majida, our friend, is very engaged. She was at an in-person Equinox event today, I believe. So we didn't see her earlier. But we've been talking, the arts going into action has been a red thread throughout the 9 hours so far. I don't 8 hours, 9 hours. I just wanted to mention that. So we
Have you
have
been
lots
here
of
the whole time, Kim?
artists here,
Yeah.
Dave and Gordon and John.
So that, because in our other talk on AI that Gordon was listening in on, where we had Robbie Stamp and whatnot. Robbie and I have been talking since before lockdown about the next Hitchhiker's Guide to Planet Earth, as he is the guardian of Douglas Adams' work. And so that was very much about how science fiction and satire can really help inform our wayfinding into the future, and how we can go about delivering ideas without this schismogenesis, this pulling apart of people into left camp and right camp and blue and red and all of these sorts of things. And that's very much a combination of both the fiction and non-fiction, and how fiction and creativity and imagination really, when connected to science, can really help us solve problems. And I think that's, us sort of creative types, we're kind of dismissed and underpaid, under-recognized. It's a struggle, especially with bloody AI art. So yeah, Kim, an
Well,
important point. Yeah. Gordon, what were you going to say?
I think that's true for meta magicians and soothsayers, and wizards and dancers and fire dancers, and when you think of it, we make a presentation as artists, as musicians, and in movement, and how we approach our humanity and engage with the public is hard to evolved to maintain their control. The one thing they certainly don't control people themselves, and they have to that we're relatively depressed and nothing good can come.
Yeah, your sound's breaking up a little bit. But I guess this goes back to the theme again of technology sometimes replacing the creative people. I know, even back in the 80s when the drum machine came about, and local bars stopped having a band in the bar. They just end up with one guy and a drum machine and a looping system, because it was cheaper than hiring a band with 4 or 5 people. And so the whole live music scene disappeared. And that was years ago. That killed that whole thing. And now with my, should I say, ex-wife, who, when I went to pick up my granddaughter, said, "Oh, look, I'll be making storybooks just like you do. I just asked ChatGPT if it can write a story about a rabbit, and it does all these pictures and writes a story. You should do that." I think, how do we survive in this when we're against this dumbing down via technology? How do we get back to our roots? How do we like Jeff was saying, how do we get marketplaces back into the community? How do we get marketplaces where people actually learn about the food they're about to eat instead of taking the packaged stuff off the shelves? I shouldn't be talking about this. I'll stop.
Do you think, Dave, that AI is capable of creating, say, a fiction that would win the highest prizes for literature?
I um I'm working on a dozen books. I've finished six. That's illustrating and writing, and I've used a combination of, like, I do all the writing because it just flows. I've tried to use a chat GBT type thing to see what it would come up with when I put a story to it, and it just has no soul. But there
Mm,
might be a line in there that I hadn't thought of before. So it's like AI art. It just feels soulless. And
mm.
I've used a combination of AI art and my own art because I can edit it just for productivity type things. But it's, I don't know. I hope we will get to value something that is handmade more as more stuff is produced by machine. You know?
When you were talking about satire before, my mind was going to Catch 22, and so much of what is in Catch 22 seems to be playing out on, on a world stage at the moment. And it just was putting the two things together. I wonder if it would ever be possible to create something so brilliant as that just by pressing a button.
Yeah, I guess it would have a good chance at a fair chance at doing it, but I don't know. This is like we this is it goes back to our subject of time, where we feel that we just don't have time. If you're in business, I don't have time to do this. I'll get the machine to do it. I don't have time to do that. And so, our IQ rating has sort of dropped by 20 points over the last 20 years, as technologies come along, and we no longer have to memorize where we're driving and how to get there. We just go to default to the smartphone and whatnot. So I think we've got some real challenges, but maybe the way things are going with our energy wars is that we're actually going to have to go back to jumping on push bikes and walking. And COVID was a really good example of that, where we had lockdown here, but I lived on a property owned by my son in a tiny house next to a forest. And because of the nature of the environment, we could walk from the forest all the way to the middle of town to the sea, through an ancient trail. And that experience, it changed my son's framing of working really hard and to make more money into let's plant fruit trees, let's spend time with the kids.
Mm.
Maybe we will be pushed into that, back into that environment. How do we navigate that? We get there by our own desire for that reconnection rather than having to. Sorry, I moved away from my mic. It probably went too quiet. Anyway, we seem to have lost Gordon again. Gordon is living, he's in Honolulu, where they've had some storms and power cuts and floods. So his connection is a bit temporary. He's a very interesting guy, though. And that's, I guess that's another example. Climate change, we're going to have to learn how to adapt really quickly. We're going to have to learn how to move. We're going to have to learn how to recognize immigration is going to be forced upon us, and migration, because of geopolitical and climate related events. When I was in Rarotonga, they were the UN were actually having a meeting there looking at Pacific migration as an example of how to manage mass migration around the world through climate change. Um, so I think people are sort of know it's on the cards.
Yes.
Um,
And
so
and at
yeah,
other scales too. I've been doing some work in Vanuatu on climate loss and damage, and um, one of the big issues there was the rising sea levels and increasing wave action, causing damage to cemeteries.
right.
And so the people in some of these villages, they're aware that they're going to have to move further up the hill, but they won't move unless the remains of their ancestors are moved as well. So there's some real deep cultural issues. It's not just physical movement. It's some really important deep cultural issues to consider. And that
Yeah,
talking about
I heard
time,
of
I mean
yeah.
that those
So
changes are happening quick in those contexts.
yeah, quicker than we expected. Because I had a bit to do with Vanuatu. I helped design the RSE scheme for seasonal workers, that
Ah,
whole
okay.
migration scheme.
Yeah.
And part of that was to address the enslavement of people coming for seasonal work because they would come to Australia and New Zealand, do seasonal work, and and the employers would extract all of the money that they were paying them through accommodation and food and other transport costs. So
Mm.
it was a big rip-off, and then so they would spend months here doing all of this labor and then go home with nothing to show. Um, but when they did go home with money, then it was creating a rich versus poor environment within the villages. And so there's a whole set of dynamics around that. Um, and so what like one of the things that I set up after doing that scheme was a village to village trust, and I sent with the guys that came here, I sent cook stoves back that were solar powered with a laptop battery in them, so they could run lights, charge their devices, connect to the internet, cook the food without using coconut shells, so reduce the cost and give them a healthy way of preparing food without smoke. So I think, I always think, there's simple technology approaches to complex problems. Um, if we think about it, and if we link up and share these ideas, Um,
Yeah.
but the people in Vanuatu, bloody brilliant, really good.
Yes. Yeah, great place.
Mm.
Mm.
Artie, you're back.
Yeah, but my internet is really unstable suddenly. I don't know why. Uh,
It seems to be the same. I think they're getting on top of us. They're starting to listen in on our talks, and the corporates are going to shut us down. They'll probably fire a few missiles in our direction, the ones that they haven't already fired in everybody else's direction. So we'll have to be a little bit more covert.
Mm.
Um, right, we're coming up to 15 minutes before the 2 o'clock, and your session starts at, or 2 o'clock for my time, but you've got another hour and a quarter before yours starts, Jeff.
No, no, mine doesn't. Well, there was some confusion about it actually. I've just sent out a midnight alert to my speakers because it's an hour earlier than we anticipated. But it'll start at 0800 UTC, so 8 o'clock in Lisbon time. So
Right.
I got a few hours, but I need to go and get some sleep. So I might leave you there. It's nice to meet you, Dave. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, I'm sure we will reconnect. Sorry, I just looked. I just adopted a Jack Russell, and he's busy eating something that he probably shouldn't,
Uh,
like my pot plants. Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully I'll catch your session.
yeah. No, thanks a lot.
Me
Catch you
too.
later.
Yes.
Thanks for popping in.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So, Kim, how long have you been on for? The whole time?
Yeah, since the beginning. Yes,
And
but it's
what?
it's been 9 hours. Yeah. Helped co-curate hours 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I've just stayed on after and was on before. So it's been great. I'm just grabbing a little dinner now. It's about almost 9 p.m. here. So
Yeah. So the yeah, for Artie, it's the crazy
Yeah.
hours in the morning.
Artie doesn't sleep. Artie does not do connect-a-thon sleeping.
This is the seventh connectathon I haven't slept through. So it's about 6:17 a.m. for me now. So I've done 12 hours already.
Yeah, I've hosted World Futures Day 7 times as well, and that's another 24-hour event. I tend to get
Amazing.
about 23 of the hours, and then I just have to get up and go for a walk and eat something. But
Yeah.
you get caught in these conversations, and you meet such interesting people that you just don't want to miss out. And it's not the same watching the recording. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah,
So I
it's
missed listening to Gordon before he left. What did I miss, Kim? Dave, if you can just tell me.
Dave,
Gordon's cut. Yeah.
you go ahead.
I was just going to say, Gordon's kind of like popped in and popped out with his connection
Mm,
challenges as well. Um, we since World Futures Day was on the 1st of March, and we've been talking since.
mm,
And there's just so much alignment, and looking at how again how best we can support each other, um, because this is for me.
mm,
Um, I've been down the venture capital path before, and to do what I need to do, I'm wary of doing that again, um, because especially when you're dealing with people's data, um, they suddenly want that. And the last person that raised their hand to support financially, um, suddenly seemed ideal, but then they thought their AI was an alien super being talking to them and wanted children to connect to the alien that was sentient. And I didn't want to create a space like that. Um, yeah, I wanted to create a space where there was no
mm.
predation and it was safe for families. So anyway, so yeah, trying to work out how we leverage and how we work together. Like UNESCO is an amazing organization. Um,
Right?
but yeah,
So I'm just glad that I got the invite because once you get into that network, you keep getting these pop-ups for different submissions. So that's how I landed with the UNESCO piece, and making the statement is steering it in a direction that nobody else is really thinking about because they're sort of conditioned to be, conditioned to think in a certain way. But even then, I think now the UN has also realized that it needs to listen to the civil society more instead of just hosting sessions and programs and events for the civil society. Right? So yeah, I think I just sort of be very shameless when I'm offered these things that I just go all out because there aren't many opportunities where you can table this argument. Yeah, and at the right places where, literally the decision makers that impact you and me are taking those decisions on our behalf. So,
yeah,
yeah,
The
yeah.
opportunity to be creative, right, in governance or something.
Mm,
The I keep looking at the that I only saw today. I mean, it's been up there for a few years, but I haven't looked in a while. This democratized creative thinking, like where we have the agency. It's not just doesn't everyone deserve the opportunity to be creative? Isn't there like creativity in every moment? There is, like in every moment. And I feel like all these pressures that are coming upon us, the one good byproduct of that is it forces creativity. So how are we in relationship with this creativity that's arising? Right?
Exactly. It's
And,
like
and it's
another friend of mine who's a poet. He said this the other day. He said, this is the best time in the world. Imagine the amount of change we can welcome if we can step up to it. I'm like, you have no idea how many people can hit you for that right now. People who are really suffering. Yeah. But yeah, it is true.
And how many, it's a few, just a few, but it's probably been this pattern for a very long time that do not want to. I mean, we're feeling it here, especially. You do not think, it's taking all of that away, make things so crazy that you just shut off and you don't think. It's so visible.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing about the people in the grassroots, the people who are in vulnerable communities or circumstances, which is why I say that they're ready for that. I mean, it's like Lord of the Rings saying that it's an army bred for a single purpose, and there are so many of them on our planet today, and wherever they've been. This is like a part of the bigger programming.
And sometimes those people I I end up having a tech company, and I'm not a tech person. The whole coding thing bores me to tears. I'm just like ideas. But I end up with this tech company, and I hired a guy from Mumbai, and then next minute I had his brother, and then his cousin, and then his friend, and so suddenly, like most of my staff were all from India, but they were all entrepreneurs, because they had really fought hard to get to where they were going. And they were all end up living in the back of a dairy shop, as they do. But yeah, and I just had to keep up with the speed. But my point is that sometimes it is it is the ones who are the refugees and the new immigrants that are really the creative ones, because they've come from having to really be creative about how industrious and work with nothing, and then entering a society that's privileged and appears affluent, where we have become lazy. We used to be innovative. Now we're not. Our productivity is terrible. But they come here and they make a real change. And so it really annoys me with these arguments at the moment, particularly from the right-wing parties, which is the anti-immigration stuff. It is all fear-based, and it's not understanding the value that people bring when you both respect another culture, without having to bend it into your culture, but share your culture so that you can find that liminal space in the middle, which is why these events are so good. That's why I love Futures Day, because it travels around the world. I get to host the start of it because I'm here in the first place to see the start of the day. And that's why it ends in Hawaii, the last place to see the end of the 1st of March. But as it goes around the world, we have people from everywhere openly contributing, from all walks of life, from amazing scientists and inventors, community champions, to the guy that climbs the ladder and picks apples. And that all goes into a UN report, futures report. So, yeah, I think there's just clues everywhere, right? How
So
to move forward.
I'd love to know more about this 24 hours that you do. we should exchange the gangs for a bit. Kim?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So World Futures Day is organized by a think tank called the Millennium Project, along with Science of Arts and Academy and the Lifeboat, um, As- a Lifeboat Association or whatever.
Okay.
I'm on the advisory board for that, but they've never asked for my advice. Um, so it's a collection of basically futurists. And understand what futurist is. It's not predicting the future, it is understanding the influences and the history and navigating really. So I'm kind of like Vince Cerf said, I'm a futurist by default because I need things that might not work today, but they end up working in 5 years' time. So
Yeah. Somebody needs to hold the vision. Yeah.
and that's only come out of desperation. Um, So, well, out of, like creating, I have the first little phone that Nokia brought out,
Wow. That's
and
brilliant.
I had 10 of these. They sent me 10 of these because I'd created the code that encrypts and then decrypts a 2D barcode, like a QR code.
Wow.
But that was connected to, I could connect that to a person and then connect that to a place, connect that to a product, and then an activity. And so that the hand taking the apple off the tree, and that field, it generated their payroll and transparency for the 22 different government organizations connected to food production and
Brilliant.
transparency. So,
That's
and that's
fascinating.
what I used to create the talking forest. And that's where I did the research with tourism research into human interaction in a natural environment with a device. Is it going to just be disruptive or is it going to enhance and augment? And then it just developed on. It made me famous for about a year.
Mhm.
Then I was a nobody again. So,
Yeah.
yeah, same old story.
That's crazy. But yeah, of lately I've started believing that, in fact, I'm slowly becoming a big fan of human augmentation because I think that in our current form, we're not able to process and churn out the amount of information that's coming to us, and we're expected to deliver on. So my WhatsApp status these days says need a bio hard drive.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, recently we had a Maori guy in the community, and he is the well-being guy. So he paints these big posters that are sort of 49 life hack type things, and they're in the university and polytechs and around town. Just all of these little sayings about mental health and well-being, and that was all cool. Somebody said, "Oh, you guys need to connect up." Because of my focus on well-being and well-being economics. So he came to visit me in my little studio, and he said, "Look, I've got this idea for an animated TV series for young people called The Minders, and there are these species that are about your heart and your head and blah blah blah." And and I went, "Oh well, actually, it sounds like a Disney movie that's actually failed." So I used technology. First, I hand drew because if you look at cultures, so many cultures, Irish culture's got leprechaun. Here we've got the fairies that live in the forest. Cultures around the world have got these sort of fairy type spirits that guide and are nature connected. So I said, well, what we could do is I'll design a species that lives underneath the park here, and we will write a series about it. So I was able to draw these species and use my drawing board, but then use AI tools to turn them into three-dimensional characters that I animated and then
Oh,
put them to
brilliant.
an environment and then did the voiceover because I used to be an actor to do the reels. And I wouldn't have been able to do all of that without having hundreds of thousands of dollars, hundreds of man hours to bring all of the people together just to create a show reel. So it all goes back to our creative capacity and using the tools in a way that really empowers and enables us. Like when I use these AI tools to create, to describe through a prompt one of these characters, I just got Disneyland and Pixar because that's what AI is trained on when you describe something. So excuse me, I had to draw myself before we would get something that was interesting and new. So, there's lessons in all of that, like working with young people, teach them to draw, teach them to see, teach them photography, and then give them these tools.
Yeah.
Get
I mean,
the brain. Yeah.
absolutely. There's a whole bouquet of things that just are fading away as far as, passing on of these legacies and these lessons is concerned from one generation to the other. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much of loss and so much of fading, the generational fading that's going on. So while I'd love to be positive, and be forward looking, which I am, but I'm not being unrealistic when I'm saying that based on our present day trajectory, if we don't rein it back, we're all doomed. I mean, it's not even like fear mongering or anything, but it's literally sort of making a logical deduction based on how reluctant we are becoming increasingly, and specifically those spaces where decisions are made. Yeah. I mean, one can be hopeful and sort of energize oneself. Sometimes I do that, but when it's like when what's that saying, when what hits the road, when rubber meets the road, yeah, that's when the moment of truth is for us, right? You get into those conversations, you see the denial, you see the reluctance, you see how they want to hijack things and sort of recolor it. I mean, I think the human behavior in reality has always been used only for manipulation. It's never been used for creating understanding and improving systems. So
Yeah.
the question I normally ask, like in a country like India, so we've got this humongous national aspiration to be a part of the government, yeah, to get government jobs, right? And there's a huge, circus around that at the grassroots. The way parents motivate their children to get government jobs, and then the kind of testing and administrative work they have to go through. It's crazy. So when people distance themselves and say, "Hey, that's the government's job," it's okay. Hang on, who is the government? Who are the people in there? Are they from like outer space or something? They come from our kind of families. So why is that distance? And then you realize that to be able to create that distance for all the private reasons, quote unquote, to create that distance is why you create bureaucracy in such a way that it looks unreachable and complex. Right? So you complicate things in such a way that the common person says, "Oh my God, that's too much for me to understand. I'll just do these things," till the tax guy comes knocking, and then you say, "Hey, I didn't know," and then it's like a very, very bad cascade effect. Yeah.
Yeah. I when I had this tech company and all of those guys working with me, because I was always siding on with the even at school, I was part of the odd bunch of kids. We weren't good at sports, and we were, part of that group. We weren't cool. We were all a bit odd. Um, and when somebody said, "Oh, look, you come from a computer background, we should start a web design company because that had just come out as the latest thing, right? And and I thought, oh, I don't really like computers. But anyway, we started the company. I always thought we need to create it so it feels friendly and fun to walk in the door instead of these technical geeks. Um, and immediately thinking that you're going to spend a fortune. Anyway, as things rolled on, um, my biggest contract was with New Zealand horticulture, creating tools for growers and whatnot. And I sort of saw the industry, but one of the people that I hired, who was a genius mathematician, had Asperger's. And when the head of that organization walked in one day, he walked up to him, told him he was a bloody idiot. And suddenly our work was cut off for a review. Um, so I had to think, what am I going to do? Because I could see a problem in the whole industry. A friend of mine who was an apple grower had committed suicide. People were going out of business. People that were coming here to pick fruit were losing money. So I designed the data reciprocity thing along with the visual recognition. And then I thought, and this gets back to government, I thought, who do I talk to?
Yeah.
This involves so many government departments, from immigration, departments of labor, Department of Health, Department of this, Department of that. And so somebody said, oh, well, here's a phone number. I rang this guy up and he said, oh, come in and give us a talk. We've got a meeting. And in the back of this room, there was this guy who came and spoke to me afterwards, who was a senior policy designer. And he said, you've solved our most complex problem with the most elegant solution. You need to be in this think tank that's just been funded that will give you access to every government department's head. And the think tank's job is to design a new way of designing policy.
Yeah.
And that's when I learned that if you're going to make any change, it's the policy designers that you have to work with who will then inform the politicians, right?
Yeah.
And so we used a facilitated methodology because I ended up becoming part of a company called Web Research, Work Education Business Research. And we used Enstrom's activity modeling or developmental work theory to facilitate workshops with the public sector heads and the private sector heads from this industry to come together each month and to model, to look at the activity systems that led to the situation we're in now and where we needed to be in the future. And it was the dynamics between the rules that were in place, the regulation, the tools that we were using, and the community of practice and the divisions of labor and the dynamics between those things. And so we had about 4 months before they said, Dave, show them how you disrupt this whole activity model with a tool, a new tool. And so that tool took away a pile of the rules and regulations because it created layers of transparency and reciprocity. And so that's the whole policy design process. Was the magic was really the facilitation and of people, because it was two groups that didn't understand each other's world. You had government that didn't really understand the troubles and the nuances of the private sector, and the private sector that didn't understand the role of government and regulation. So the head economist from the World Bank, she had a coffee with me one day as we celebrated 10-year history, said, how did that happen? How did you do it? But we had a change of government. They didn't want to know. They wanted the control back in government and the ideology instead of this participation. But civic assemblies are starting to emerge again, I think. And maybe my hope is this is where we see we're in such a bad state that we need to bring these civil assemblies and tap into the energy and the power of community.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
mean, I've
but
been
we
saying
can't.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been saying this for quite a while that, I mean, looking at how nations have been functioning, we seem to have failed at it. So the future clearly is going to be of resilient communities that would define what nations are. So we've got to go a little backward into go sort of downstream instead of upstream first, to cause that infusion of fresh thinking to take place. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, you see, we are all programmed largely because of our institution of religion and whatnot to be followers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I heard so many people since the time we began today that I used to believe in it and it didn't work out for me, like, organized religion and whatnot. So this whole conditioning of the human system of being a follower, so I call it the culture of followerhood. That's never ever going to help us sort of lift our heads out and see for and take the responsibility for our own action and decision. So it's almost like,
Yeah.
the other day I was in a conversation, Dave, and in fact, the next hour is mine. That's to do with energy. So maybe we can just sort of extend this conversation into that hour. Yeah.
Sounds like a good idea. How much time have we got? Probably ages.
Kim is our timekeeper. So where are we? We are at
Yeah.
we're at about 1:30 UTC right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's
1:15 UTC, I guess. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think the lesson was well, a lesson for me that I wish I'd, because some people in government still remember what happened and still reach out to me and say, that idea from it's 20 years ago now cost me my marriage, because I'd signed a contract to provide this technology, and the head in this country, the head of immigration got done for fraud. She'd claimed a degree from Oxford that she didn't have, so my contract was
boy.
frozen. So all 5 years of work kind of went down the drain a little bit. That policy stayed, so that was good. And we end up using that technology for COVID, and everybody else used it for a whole pile of other things that are just stupid. But the main thing is that I think today is that we don't facilitate these meetings very well. And what I got out of that was that process of facilitating through modeling the activity systems and understanding how we got there through earlier activity systems to end up with those sets of rules and tools and things is the key for us to solve all of these problems. Well, a key to getting some structure and some thinking, because we go into a meeting and we go, oh, here's a problem. And someone says, I know, we should try this. And everybody says, no, we tried that before, it didn't work. But you haven't really explored why it didn't work, or really explored the unintended consequences of, if you did that, what might happen down the road. And so you've got to look at where that activity came from, where that activity is, and if we change this, what will the dynamics be within that model?
And see, the other thing is that social media and our engagement with media in general and computers and AI and all of that, it's sort of it's a very strange thing I get to hear that we need simple solutions. Like, we live in such a complex world with such complex problems. How can we have simple solutions? The challenge is that people who have to sort of become a part of the solution do not have the appetite to consume the understanding of complexity.
Yeah.
I
Right?
need to, oh, sorry.
Yeah. Go on, go
All
on.
right, come.
Yeah, so I'm hearing dialogue. I'm hearing we gather for no reason. We just gather, and then whatever comes up in the field is meant to come up, and there is problem solving, but it's a byproduct. It's like we're not here to solve the problem. And the more different, the more diverse group that we have together, that's getting into the collective intelligence, right?
Mhm.
And there's such great beauty in taking the time to go slow and having these concepts that we hold so tightly that we don't even realize loosen, right? That's the unexamined assumptions that we don't know we have that come up. So it can be in community and it can be individually, and that is freedom. That is real freedom. So I'm just
Well,
I think Paul,
my
Paul
passion.
mentioned,
I love, and then we notice everything else that's around us. Our senses sharpen. When it's not just theoretical, like life speaking to no, all of this. So what if we're really present together? That was the question from earlier. What if we're present together with the trees and the mountain and the sky? I don't know. I just feel like there's some magic,
well,
practical
it goes
magic.
back to, yeah, it kind of goes back to what this session was about, which was time. And, I think about at that time when I was doing that, I was invited into another government advisory group on education. And I presented, it was a time of wildfires in LA. And my co-presenter was Maxwell Kennedy, Robert Kennedy's son. And Maxwell Kennedy had created um, a community app or using Google Maps to pinpoint where the fires were around LA. And it was more effective than the emergency management system because it was in real time and people were posting, oh, it's down our street, blah, 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 blah. And what happened was that one of these bloody little bureaucrats in this meeting said, we haven't got time to listen to this. Who is this guy? And I'm thinking, we haven't got time. Yeah, because they're going to have a meeting and talk about stuff and actually probably achieve nothing because they don't have time to listen to somebody from the outside world presenting something that they don't really know about. That's another way of looking at things and emerging technologies. So that we don't have time. It's
Operating
always cuts
system.
our legs off.
And now we're outside with Artie.
It's daylight, so yeah, that's my little view from my terrace. I've got a
Beautiful.
lovely garden. I think I'm gonna, yeah, that's my dad driving for his little get together with friends in the morning.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, so I was just planning to actually, find a spot there and do the session with John Kabuta because I
Yeah.
have peacocks coming around this time. So maybe we'll
Right.
catch some in the background.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What city, whereabouts are you?
I am in Gurgaon. That's close to New Delhi. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
the satellite town of New Delhi, extension of,
Right.
yeah. It's called the Millennium City. So we've got like literally all the Fortune 500s with their Asia headquarters here, but we've got a lot of garbage in our streets as well. The Millennium City.
Right.
Yeah. But where I live it's like a green bubble, you know. I mean, it's very beautiful. Everything is like super lush. I've got a little a bioreserve happening right next to my place. So we've got these exotic animals coming in and all the migratory birds. So yeah, that's cool.
That's because that's the view across my fields to the mountain. So
Yeah. Wow. That
it's
really is
always,
real. It's not like a background.
oh, this it is a photo that's pretty much what I see. These flowers around it
Yeah.
just
Wow.
generated. Um,
It is.
but yeah, it looks spectacular when it's got snow. It was actually used in the Last Samurai movie as Mount Fuji,
Yeah.
which was a kind of funny because the whole story of the Last Samurai
Mhm.
about this American guy that ended up joining the samurai after he thought they were the bad guys and they were the you know the natives. Um, we have our own story, the genuine story on that mountain here about a British trooper who was told to come to New Zealand to fight the uneducated tribes people, and then he got captured by them. He got full face tattoo, and realized that they were far more civilized than the British. So it was the same story, and this location. I always thought they should have made that film, not the samurai film here.
Oh,
But anyway,
could you
I end
hear
up
that? That was tough.
I end up living in a house with all of a lot of with cannons and stuff from the movie set. So that was interesting. Anyway.
It's crazy. Wow. So we got nobody else joining Kim this time. I think it was during COVID and post-COVID. We used to have like 190, 200 people logging in at any point, right? I mean,
I wasn't here for that. No, I don't. Yeah, but I heard that. I heard.
yeah. So during COVID, we had like a full house and a full house.
I
But it's okay.
believe it.
We're keeping the tradition alive.
Yeah, and if we start planning now for the next equinox, we know when it is. We know when the next Saturday is. There is a way, but then it's also like what is alive at the time of the of the equinox of our connectathon. I'm telling you, the best one of the best things I saw last time. I think it was last time was your middle of the night for me. Nature reverence. I think there were 3 people there already, and
Yes, I
or
remember that.
maybe 5 people. It was amazing. I'm putting in here in a link. A movie started playing when I first turned my computer on today. Mountains That Weep. It was in Emergence magazine last week, and I haven't. It's a film, and I
Nice.
just think I don't know. I feel like I should share it just to so you all have it. Mountains That Weep. Emergence Magazine's a beautiful magazine. It's free on Sundays. Comes out digitally.
Hmm.
You can get to it from that film if you ever want.
Yeah. Well, I've got the movie on, but I'll watch it after Connectathon.
Yeah, I
Cool.
haven't watched
So
it either. I've had it open, but just today it started playing.
This just reminds me of something really crazy. When I was a kid, one of my teachers, she asked me, teachers would always ask you, what do you want to become when you grow up? And I actually said I want to be a mountain because it's just lived so much life. And I had no clue that was a very stupid answer for her. But today I know what I meant. That's crazy, right? So I actually, because I love mountains, I mean, I go there and I just become silent. There's not a single sound that comes out of me. I just want to listen to the mountain.
yeah, that's why I love living here because within 5 minutes I can be in a forest, um, in town, rainforest. 10 minutes I'm at big open beaches, um, and or I can go up that mountain into the goblin forest and climb that mountain. It's you can surf and you can ski in the same day. Um,
Wow.
both going to be cold, but it's just every day I walk through. I take the dog for a walk through the forest, and that's where all my if I'm stuck with ideas and that the forest. That's the roots, the way they weave together. The because just first I say hello to. I have to put my glasses on to read. Part of lose my
Yeah,
eyesight.
that's Alice. Hey, Alice.
Namuli.
Good to have you here.
Hello.
Hi, hi everyone. Sorry.
Where are you calling in from?
Ontario. Sorry, Canada. Sorry.
Right, another Canadian. Excellent.
I'm in the Great Lakes Basin with you. I'm in Cleveland on bottom of Lake Erie.
Nice to meet you all.
Yeah.
So, Alice, do you have an hour coming up with us, or are you?
No, I think I'm a bit confused. So I think I'm going in later, so I'll get out of here. Sorry.
No, you can
Oh,
stay
yeah,
on
no, you're welcome to
if you've got
join.
nothing else going.
Oh
We
no,
we
don't leave.
we are all hungover after halftime, so we are on.
Okay, fair enough.
I think this is hour 13, is it? We're in. I lost count. I thought we were in hour 9, but we're
Yeah,
not.
no, we started at 9, 10, 11. So next one will be 12.
Okay.
So this is
I
hour
think.
12 now that we're going to start, right?
Yeah, that'll be the next one. We've
Another
still got
15 minutes. We'll start hour 12. Is that?
really? No,
Well,
according to my watch, it's another 33 minutes. It's well, for me, it's 2:27 p.m. So
Okay.
I finish at 3.
9:27 here.
6:57 here. So UTC for me, 2 UTC is 7:30 a.m. Yeah, so that's about half an hour more, 33 minutes.
Okay.
Okay,
Right.
cool.
Yeah. Okay,
No
we're
problem.
coordinated.
Yeah, super.
Because that was part of my first section was a coordination of time.
Mm.
And because in Polynesian time or Maori time, it is fluid because it doesn't tend to be based on the sun so much as the moon. And yeah, that changes. So yeah, it's all a bit tricky. And maybe
I
a
was
much better idea.
I was in a World Cafe dialogue. It was like go out and listen. A 3-week program. It had a one weekend opening that was just the opening round, the opening cafe. And then for the next 3 weeks, go out and just listen. What's wishing to emerge, and from practice to presence. And I was in a conversation with the 2 people on the African continent, Kuta, who was here earlier today, and Fred, who's in Uganda, Kuta's in Cameroon, and Thomas, the poet, who was here. So and I said something. It was an amazing, amazing dialogue happening. And I said, okay, I'm just aware of the clock, because there's only a 1 hour conversation. And Fred in Uganda just started laughing. He's like, you Western people and your clocks, you, if you come here and you come visit here, you stay as long as you want. You stay overnight. We would never, ever tell anyone to leave. So just a whole, like you were saying, Dave, the time fluidity. And then another thing, sometimes we have a Friday group that's gathered in this inquiry every Friday for the last several years. And we started playing with the notion of time, like stepping in and out of the eternal now, just thinking it, and like, oh, time seems to expand in the eternal now. Deadlines become lifelines. Like if I'm working and I don't have time, the deadline is. But wait, if it's like to help someone, it's interior, but there's something to it, kind of like expanding the present moment. So I was worried when Artie said I'm the timekeeper. I forgot. I was the timekeeper. So I'm glad you're watching the time, Dave.
Yeah, and I just reading that, yeah, it is the lean hour because so many people are in a completely different time zone. So that was a challenge, but
Yeah.
all good. We will get there. So can we know so many people in common. It's quite freaky, really. And it was the same with Marina as well, that she asked and say, "You seem to know everybody in the world, um, but I think it's just like minds attract." I think there's something called the golden pond effect, where part of the pond is rich in food, and so all the fish end up coming to that part of the pond, and then it gets richer and richer. So
Ah.
something has attracted us together, share a common cause. And I guess the challenge is, how do we spread that beyond that point in the pond?
Don't know. Do you ever feel like you're being organized into things? Like, the self-organizing that's not like
Just happens.
didn't decide to do this.
Yeah.
So I chalk everything up to this inquiry the last few years. The just holding questions. Just it's a different way of living. Holding questions, asking questions, but not really like looking for the answer, and understanding comes, right? And because this is also dialogue and something on thought, just noticing thought, and really noticing this. Well, earlier we were talking about realities. Someone was mentioning in the dominant realities, and it very much is a reality that the synchronicity is the nature of reality that deserves standing. David Bohm would say that.
Yeah.
And I just feel so much the same.
That's because I was hoping to get Nanoa Thompson on here, who was the guy that really revitalized the Voyaging Society. So the Pacific Voyaging Society, it was almost a lost art, how they built their big seagoing waka, and the navigation techniques that they learned. And there was one old guy that was a carver who was the last navigator, and he passed this information on, and then they built Hokulao, the first of these waka, and they taught this awareness to these young sailors of how to pick up the sound of the waves slapping against the waka, and how to read the sail turning as the wind was altered because there was a distant island, how to read the stars, how to read the clouds, how to look at the seabirds and know which ones to follow. So it was this deep awareness. But through that, what I really loved about that whole thing was that it re-established the idea that these people they didn't just haphazardly go off hoping to find something, never to return. And because they left planning, knowing that there was something there that they were going to get to. And so because of the limitation of the size of the waka, they were only in small family groups. So the genealogy as they went from island to island is quite strong. It's not diluted all that much, which is where, when we were able to sample DNA, the scientists were finally going, well, maybe they were right with their stories. Maybe they did go there intentionally instead of land on the shore, as depicted in early paintings of these starving Polynesians, who just happened to get shipwrecked on this island here. So there's such a big lesson in that whole rejuvenization and revitalization of the culture and self-esteem and learning and skills that we need today, that it just connects us to place, even if that place is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
That's where they feel home.
It reminds me of earlier. Chantel said she went to a Two-Eyed Seeing Building Ethical Space conference in Canada. I went with her last year, or 2 years ago was the last one. And it was indigenous led, traditional ecological knowledge, also traditional spiritual knowledge, at the intersection. It was on climate change, right? And because watching change, you're in relationship, with all of nature. And the people who went there, it was a culture shock for me being in the US, in a state where, almost prohibited from using the word climate, just the whole political charge. And it was before now. I mean, it got so much worse since then, just 2 years ago. But scientists were there, Western scientists were there, mayors sent people, from their staffs. Chantal's a city council person. We're sitting with guardians from the forest. That was like their job title. And it was just a big mix. And there was none of the polarization that exists where I am. And it was just 3 hours away, a 3-hour drive on the other side of Lake Erie. And to me, it sunk in how much that's human culture. It's human, it's our thinking. It's the only difference is in culture. And to be around like just whole communities that live in this participatory way with nature, who will understand we are nature. It's I think it allows shifts to happen for those of us who have spent a lot of time individually like that.
Yeah.
So societies, I don't know, for some reason it definitely gives me some hope, because all of this is conditioning. All of,
And it's conditioning that is fairly contemporary, it wasn't that long ago. Like if you think about, well, India as an example, or China, um, there's so many different cultures and languages within this thing that we call China, place that we call China, that we simplify down to, oh, China, communism, blah, 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 this one system. But it's really so many different languages and cultures and ways of living. And they've been living together in these different cultures for so long. And it's the same with Maori. Um, I talked about Matariki and the stars and the calendars and that, but different iwi, which are tribal groups, have different interpretations of those stories. So there's not a generic you are this or you are that. Society is so much more nuanced. And society's, you know, learning how to deal with the unknown, like whether you're a voyager going out into the Pacific Ocean, or you are living in Māoridom. They used to have pās, so there was a lot of Māori wars before there were European wars, and the way they would manage um, having another iwi or tribal group coming to their fortification was that they had a liminal space, a atia, which was a neutral ground. And so what would happen was that this visiting tribe would come, because they might be coming for war, or they might be coming to trade. And so they would come up to this liminal space and be challenged. And this is where the haka comes from, that's used in sports now. And then they would challenge back, and then they would put a fern down, and they would accept the fern, and then they would hongi, which is put their noses together, and then they would become one. So they had a protocol for how to deal with the unknown.
Excuse me.
And how to immerse that unknown into their environment. So I guess my point is that there's so much diversity and complexity, and we've turned it into a very base and crude way of seeing the world in geopolitics, and we've really given up so much of the rich cultural thread.
Well, and that's
You're
the
in the right
lens.
spot.
The lens. So, I mean, things look a different way when we're just looking through the geopolitical lens.
Oh, that lens, that's thick.
Hmm.
So a very interesting thing happened in December last year. So I was in Dubai and I got invited for this interesting program with the students at the embassy. And so I was giving them a whole lowdown on how they need to plan for multiple careers across their lifetime and not just chase after this one thing that I want to become an engineer or a doctor or something, you know? So, and I ended up sharing the whole story about me working with students who were caught in terrorism or riot victimization or prison systems and stuff like that. And this one kid asked me that, why did you decide to do this work? And honestly, Kim, Dave, this is what came out of me. I said, I have always been affected by the fact that somewhere along the lines of our lack of humanity, we've become comfortable wasting each other. The loss of intellect and wisdom and potential and talent and capability that we've recorded by way of our inhumanity. It could be Tesla, it could be some spot boy in the back of a film studio, it could be anybody. That whole comfort is something that it just doesn't sit right with me. So I apply myself wherever I think that there is wastage of potential going on. And that's literally the thing that's on with all of us. We're either at the receiving end or sometimes we have to compromise and waste somebody to a certain circumstance. Right? And I think that just defines the fact that we've not been able to aggregate our wisdom as a human species, right? The only extension of that aggregation that we've made is in the form of technology. And therefore, technology seems to be winning over us. Or rather, that's a larger sentiment because we're still in denial to be participating enough.
That's why I get really annoyed with the current state of politics here with this austerity thing. We've got to cut back cost and we've got to, live within our means. So we've got to get rid of the humanity subjects, because they're not producing products. So we're just stuck in this product mindset. And my life, because I just end up volunteering to do things and then kind of create a job out of it. And so I end up living in a really tiny little house, and then I end up in a great big house, and I end up in a little tiny house. So I just don't, at the moment, I'm in a big old farmhouse, but it's just given up collecting things. I've gone from a big Jag to electric scooter, because I don't need to have a car that, I've got 5 kids, they've got 6 kids. They've got their own cars. I just need to get into town and buy milk. So living a less complicated life, I guess we're privileged in that way. I feel privileged because I grew up in a time where my parents could own their own home, that we always had food, that there was always a job when you left school. You had options. Now I look at my children and they end up with big debt before they even leave education. Their potential for what they've spent their lives training in might have disappeared because of technology. And the grandchildren, I don't know what sort of future. Hopefully, a brighter one. But that's motivates me to get out of bed, and not just be retired. It's a real problem. The lack of philosophy a lack of philosophical thought, as you were saying.
Oh, that's a big, big, big gap as of today. I mean, honestly, every time I run training programs, I ask people, I said, okay, so let's just go back a few years. We had great grandparents who had like 10 children, yeah, or 12 children. And these grandparents of yours or great grandparents of yours, they made sure that their children were married and they were settled. And, you know, towards the end of their days, they were like lying down on the farm and doing their own thing. So, what do you think worked for them? And people tell me, well, they had less distractions. They had, you know, I said, no, according to their time, they had equal amount of distraction. You can't compare, you know, apples with oranges. So the thing is that those were the people, they had like 4 or 5 principles they lived their entire lives by, never stepped down from those. So what are your principles? And would you believe the kind of responses I get to that question? I like listening to music. So when you look at that deficit right in your face, you're wondering, are you the odd one out, or is there a certain kind of abnormality with you? Because there's a whole bunch of people who don't think that way anymore. Or is that the real recession that we're not calling out?
Yeah.
Intellectual recession, the recession of wisdom, the recession of acquired and applied philosophy, which is why the statement with UNESCO that we need to have a revival. So I'm also saying that maybe we need to have a revival of the age of romanticism, but better
All
informed.
for that.
Yeah, better informed with
Yeah.
more purpose. Because romanticism was all about celebrating the child, celebrating love, celebrating innocence and tenderness, and all of those human characteristics, which have just been like locked up somewhere. So we don't see the reflection of those realities of our construct in our institutions and things that we do in professions that we have. So I actually crunched all the human professions in the world to about 12 key areas of, you know, attention. And those are the things that need to be interwoven in practically every segment of what we're doing. It could be policy writing, it could be manufacturing, it could be anything, you name it.
Mm.
So
Well, remember what you said, Artie, about being of the first generation that hands were not in the dirt. In fact, you know, parents said, don't put your hands in the dirt. So losing the wisdom of Earth, we are Earth, you know, that was part of it. And it hasn't been all that long, you know. So
surprisingly,
again, hope. But so for the kids to have, they haven't lost that separation yet. To encourage and nurture like garden relationship, not just to grow food as a resource, but all of that feels like alive. And you know, maybe the parents then get it from the kids, and that interior development that we forget. And then maybe if we're fortunate, it comes back if we choose a philosophy. But whoever, we don't do that if we don't have time. If we're working all the time, if we unexpectedly have time, sometimes that flourishing begins. I've seen.
This is what we got so right with COVID, that when we went into lockdown, we had Jacinda Ardern as our prime minister, and they decided that they needed to support small business. And so everybody who had a business could apply for a grant from the government. And my son had a building company. He got $36,000 to cover the next 3 months of wages overnight, immediately. They put it into thing. But that time where he was not working, we planted raised gardens and we planted 70 fruit trees. We started doing things and it changed his whole mindset, out of the rat race into realizing that he was doing this for his daughter. And so he's been successful in his business, works really hard, does really good. So he's just bought 10 acres that includes native forest and a river to get not only his two children, but my other kids, other grandchildren, back onto the land where I've got the job of planting a food forest because I've got plenty of time in the world, and we will get, we're lucky that we can do that and get them back there away from, otherwise they're stuck on tablets and TikTok and all that sort of stuff. And they're becoming more isolated in doing so. Yeah, that's my motivation.
I love seeing India. I love seeing
Yeah,
quite
that's
beautiful.
amazing. Thank you. Just to add to what you guys are saying, I think urbanization is one of the reasons why kids have been disconnected. So places like New Delhi, places like New York, there's literally, I mean, their idea of a good view is a view of the tallest building,
Right?
Yeah.
right? So your connection with soil is so far removed from your person and your future generations. It's like I was talking to this one kid in a village in India, and I asked him, I said, "What does your father do?" He says he does nothing. I said, "Oh, really? How come?" So upon probing, I realized that his father was a farmer. And this child had an aspiration to go get a big job in a city, and he doesn't want to be in this thing. And then I asked him, I said, okay, what do you study at school? So he listed out subjects. I said, which subject do you like? He says, chemistry. And I asked him, I said, inorganic or organic? He goes, organic. So I said, honey, you got it in your DNA. Tap into it.
Yeah.
Sat with him, made him Google certain things, sort of string it together for his own sanity and understanding. And I mean, we're 8 billion unique people, and there's no system of engagement for our uniqueness. Crazy.
Certainly the education system is quite broken. Well, speaking from here, even in my day, you were kind of like put into three boxes, whether you're going to work for the government, whether you're going to be a tradesperson, whether you might go to university, or four boxes, or work in a factory. And I remember as I walked out of school, I had to get permission, and from the principal of the school, and he said, "I've been watching you. You're going to be our first millionaire." And I thought, "Oh, I thought nobody even noticed I was here." And as I walked out the door, he said, "Goodbye, Donald." He didn't actually know who I was. But it took me quite a number of years to discover that I wasn't dumb because I was kind of failing in the school system for being dyslexic. And it was that old different way of looking at the world that just like Gordon, when he lost his eyesight, become his superpower. Different way of seeing things and building that empathy for other people um, become my thing. Like I'm not hugely intelligent, but I am motivated by heart. So, yeah.
Yeah. So here we are, 5 minutes to go. But we can already, so I think we've sort of dissolved the lines between sessions in the lean hour. So let's just flow into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We want to stop the recording and start the recording again?
Okay, let's do it.
So, yeah.
You may need to do that, Dave.